Hi, I'm Dr. Soumya Ramesh. I'm the Senior Fertility Specialist with Rotunda Center for Human Reproduction, India, Mumbai.
Hi, I'm Dr. Yashodhara. Most of you all will know me as Dr. Yash. Yashodhara is a difficult Indian name for everybody to get. I'm the reproductive endocrinologist with Surrogacy India based in Mumbai.
I'm Dr. Kabiri Banerjee. I'm an IVF expert working in New Delhi.
I'm Dr. Michael Feynman from HRC Fertility in Los Angeles, and I'm a reproductive endocrinologist.
I'm Vivek Kohli from Vizag Surrogacy Consultants. We are a one-stop shop solution for surrogacy solutions in India. We are based in Delhi, and we have tie-ups with all IVF centers, top-notch IVF centers across the country. So we basically provide one-stop shop solution for all aspects related to surrogacy.
Hello, P2. I'm Jagatjeet Singh. I'm the director of Vizag Surrogacy Consultant in New Delhi. The same Vivek is already mentioned about, and we are handling everything under one shop here in a corporate way within New Delhi. Thank you.
Pass it back a little forward. Okay, let's get started. This is sourcing donors and surrogates. On the question of egg donors, whether we always source nulliparous donors or whether we source only donors who've had previous children. Dr. Matre, would you like to start us off on that one? What's your policy?
For the egg donors and surrogates?
Egg donors, do you use women only who've had children or do you have women who haven't?
The egg donor program has been going on for a very long time in India. The main criteria that we have for egg donors is they have to have children of their own. They should be more than 21 years of age and less than 30 years of age. And when we do screen the donors, we always do karyotyping and genetic testing in spite of them having their own children to see that there are no chromosomal anomalies that they may be carrying. So these would be the basic criteria for the egg donors that we would follow. And of course, a complete investigation package to see that they are infection-free and they are healthy to be able to donate.
Right. Is that the general case in India? Do any other units do anything different to that?
Mostly the same, but we do not keep the karyotype test as mandatory. We take a history of any genetic abnormalities and do not do karyotype until and unless indicated or requested by the couples. As we know, there can be some misconceptions due to some normal karyotypes as well. So that's not mandatory. Rest everything is the same.
Right. Dr. Ramesh, what about you? Are you pretty much the same?
You're pretty much the same. We do not believe karyotype as being a mandatory test.
Right.
And genetic testing would also be a bit country-centric or patient-centric if there are certain patients who want certain things ruled out. Cystic fibrosis genes and so on and so forth, we do conduct it. So a blanket genetic testing in any case is not possible.
What about why is that? Are you very much the same?
Yeah, this is one of the same things.
Same sort of policy.
Same criteria you're following.
Right. What about you, Michael, in the States?
Well, actually, I started doing egg donation in 1987 in New York under the guise of a very prestigious ethics committee at a university, and have since sat on 2 other ethics committees. And I actually have felt that egg donors should have children, but not because of a mythological belief that they're better egg donors. It's actually not true. We've had some of the worst egg donors ever with cute little children sitting next to them. But I always felt that it was a matter of informed consent, that a woman who'd had a child could make a better informed decision. But believe it or not, on 3 ethics committees and across the United States, there's absolutely, all the ethics committees disagreed with me and felt that it was a woman over 21's inherent right to do this if she wanted to. So we have donors generally that are age 21 to 30. They often don't have children. They're mostly college students. The FDA has a very stringent policy of infectious disease screening now, which we have to adhere to. And as Karen mentioned, we're audited by them on that basis. There's a new genetic screening tool in the United States called Counsyl, C-O-U-N-S-Y-L. It's the first of what's going to obviously be a new generation of universal genetic screening tools that for $350 checks the donor for 100 genetic diseases. So it's way overkill, but it does include the most important conditions like cystic fibrosis, spinal muscular atrophy, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, and so forth. We do not do the karyotype, the translocation that the good doctor was talking about. It has an incidence of 1 in 10,000 in the general population, so we don't think that meets the standard of genetic screening, particularly if the woman's had children. It's pretty unlikely she has a translocation, so we don't do it, but other programs do, but it's a matter of perspective.
Interesting. Let's move on to sperm. Dr. Ramesh, do you encourage your intending fathers to come to India to donate a fresh sperm specimen, or do you ship their frozen sperm across?
We are okay with both because our studies have indicated an equally good results with the frozen semen sample as compared to the fresh semen sample. They might want to come down to India for 2 or 3 more other things like seeing the center, being sure where they are doing their procedures, and 2, to go and visit the hospital where the surrogate is going to deliver, meet the doctors concerned, so it allays a bit of the fears and apprehensions that they may have in their mind, meet their surrogate if it's possible at the same time. So these are possible reasons why they can come, but sending just the sperm across and just being there as a sperm donor is not really mandatory. I mean, that may not be the primary reason why they come down to us.
What about the 20% or so of men who are going to have poor and sometimes really bad sperm counts? Does that influence your thinking? Do you encourage them to come across?
Well, they would be, of course, it would be in case of, we had just recently a doctor who had come down because he had a vasectomy reversal. In such cases, yes, definitely, because if the sperm count is very poor, it might be very good for them to be here with us so that we can do a fresh cycle for them. Other than that, no. In very specific cases, yes.
Dr. Banerjee, do you people referring patients to you, do you encourage them to fully investigate the patients and do all the screening tests before the patient is sent to you, or do you like the patient just as is?
Preferably when all the screening tests have been done, because many of our consultations are through the email. So once we have a query, we also send them a list of tests that need to be done. So all electronic queries are settled before, and we have all the investigations. But of course, patients come from all over. We have local patients, so then we have to handle case by case.
Thank you. Vivek, in your unit, do you accept frozen embryos shipped across? In other words, if the patient were treated here and the eggs collected here and the embryos frozen, do you accept frozen embryos flown across to India?
Yeah, certainly we have all these services through which the frozen embryos can be imported from anywhere across the world, and we can carry out such procedures. In fact, we have different kinds of plans with us, since we are not limited by being the center ourselves. Therefore, we have tie-ups with different centers. So that gives us the flexibility of having different kinds of plans. Like there's an East-East plan in which the IVF and the surrogacy is carried out in India itself. Then there can be a West-East plan where if a particular intended parent wants the IVF to get done in any other country, maybe the US, they can get it done in the US, and the frozen embryos can be then shipped to India. And then the similar thing carries on the basis of what kind of donors they want, and the plans can further be elaborated. But we have all the aspects in place whereby already we've done a lot of procedures with shipped embryos, and especially we've done procedures where the sperms have gone from Israel to US, and the fertilization process has been carried out in the US, and the embryos that were formed in US were then transported to India for the surrogacy procedure. So it all seems a little complicated, but actually everything is well in place and it's within the system.
I want you to talk a bit more about that a bit later. Michael, as the only American clinician here, you're going to get sort of landed under the, what do you do in your country? Do you encourage the husbands to come and donate a fresh specimen, and do you like patients to be fully worked up before they come to you, and do you accept shipped embryos?
Well, the most important reason for coming over is to meet the surrogate. I actually have, there's a gentleman in the audience I just met for the first time. He's a father of 5 years. I just met him for the first time that we helped. I've worked with CSP. I have people I've never met the patients. and some other patients that in Australia who were just transferring egg donor embryos themselves. So yes, we do ship embryos and accept frozen sperm, and with ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, pretty equal results with fresh or frozen. Obviously, as you said, if the man has really poor sperm count, then he has to come to the clinic for the day of the egg retrieval. But the main thing is to make sure that the couples have met the surrogates. So oftentimes with foreign couples, the agencies and I will coordinate a big visit where they meet the surrogate, they have the requisite trip to Disneyland, and then the husband leaves sperm in the lab and everybody's had a good time.
And don't put the microphone down, Michael, because I'm going to start with the next one.
I just want to say something about
sorry.
that couple. The intended mother did meet the surrogate, so but the intended father eventually did. They did have a match meeting over the phone, so that really is important because you want to make sure that your surrogate and the intended parents have the same type of communication style, they're on the same page on what they expect for the surrogacy.
Thank you. Having started off on something in which we mostly agree, let's get on to something in which we might not, and that's embryo transfers. I'd like to know, I think, what percentage of embryo transfers are fresh transfers and what percentage of frozen thawed transfers, because in this country they're almost all frozen thawed. And if we freeze the embryos, we keep them quarantined for 6 months, we keep the eggs and hepatitis on the intending parents and on the surrogate, and then we're free to transfer the embryos. And very few of our transfers are fresh, and I wonder what the situation is in America and India. And I'd like to know, secondly, how many embryos you transfer and what the rationale for that is and what the factors are that influence your decision on the numbers of transfer. So, Michael, would you like to start off and tell us how much fresh transfers you do?
Well, we are allowed to do fresh transfer in the United States because I mentioned before the FDA has now imposed these rather stringent screening processes. So on anybody putting gametes into another person, egg donor into a recipient, or a couple putting their gametes into their embryo into a surrogate, we can do it fresh, and there's a host of tests, including this thing we call the middle group, the above 35 to 43 group. They, a lot of them want to try to maintain their genetic lineage, so they're not running to do AI unless it's a desperation act. So it's kind of going. It's funny that it's what started the process. CSP is a pioneer in that area, and yet now the very thing that started this whole discussion is kind of falling by the wayside.
I do about 1 case a year.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So
we get requests in this country, and some states legislation allows it, and some states legislation doesn't. We've always been a bit reluctant about traditional surrogacy because, rightly or wrongly, we feel that the woman is conceiving and delivering what is actually her own child, and we worry that there may be an increased risk of declining to relinquish the child, because in this country, the law says that the woman who gives birth to the child is the child's mother. It's hers.
That's the same in ours.
Yeah.
There is a risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you know of any sort of instances in the States where this sort of thing has occurred, where there's a traditional surrogate who's refused to give up the child?
Well, there was this was the landmark case, the so-called Baby M case, occurred in the late 80s. I was in New York at the time. It was a traditional surrogacy arranged with the surrogate that CSP had refused. So it proves that the screening process they use is very effective. They turned the surrogate down. She went to another agency who's no longer in existence, and midway through the pregnancy she announced that she was going to keep the baby. It turned into a national scandal. It's every day on the newspapers and the television, following it rivetedly. What was going to happen. There was a strong suspicion that this woman went into the deal planning it. Her husband, if I recall, had a vasectomy and she wanted another kid, and there was a suspicion that this was all manipulated for this woman to get the baby. So like many, the old, one rotten apple spoils the barrel. As Karen showed you, New York and New Jersey, where I was in practice at that time doing egg donation, it made it, that as a knee-jerk reaction, those states made all surrogacy illegal, and then afterwards, it's like they're regretting some of their decisions here in Australia. They were a little sorry they included gestational surrogacy in the law, but now it's the law that has stuck since then. So that's the big famous case. In California, I believe there was one challenge, and the courts found in favor of the intended parents.
Thank you. The concern in this country also is that in those states in which traditional surrogacy is allowed, it doesn't necessarily have to be carried out through an ART centre. And our concern there is the lack of control of the process that can occur as a result. And the absolute classic in this country was before there was any legislation at all. And this was the wonderful story of Baby Evelyn, which hit the press and the courts in a big way in this country. So we're not terribly comfortable with the traditional surrogacy. Can I come on to delivery, David? And since you, Michael, sorry, and since you've got the mic in your hand, I presume you manage your surrogates the same as any other IVF patient. When you're planning delivery, what influences your decision on how to deliver the patient, and how do you usually deliver?
By referring them to a well-qualified, board-certified, licensed obstetrician gynecologist, and then they all live and be well. Obviously, you know, we're seen by the couple and the surrogate, whom we've really formed a very personal attachment to as someone that is worthy of an opinion. But I always defer to the OB doctor, and thank God I'm usually not there in the middle of the night when it's happening. The only conversation I might get involved in prenatally is, should there be elective C-section for twins? My vote is often yes, but I leave that in the hands of the OB. And we, of course, have cases, as you saw in the video, of vaginally delivered twins. And sometimes they'll discuss with me the prenatal testing that's appropriate. And I'll give an opinion, but I always caveat it with, listen, you got to talk to your OB doctor.
Okay. Dr. Banerjee, yeah. Can you tell us the situation in your clinic? How do you deliver the patients, and what influences your decision?
Twins, yes, it is almost 100% elective cesarean section. For singleton cases, we wait. If the pregnancy is uncomplicated, we wait till 38 completed weeks. Then we do a pelvic assessment and see if the cervix is favorable. We give a trial of vaginal delivery. And about 50 to 60% would deliver vaginally. In case the cervix is not favorable or anything that is indicative, for example, breech, non-reactive NST, we don't wait. I mean, these are patients who have been trying for 15 years for a baby, so we are not too tuned on to natural or cesarean. But yes, we would give them a chance for natural if it was easy and safe.
Right, so unless there's a clear indication of elective Caesar, you tend to go for vaginal delivery with a very low threshold for going on to Caesar. Would that be?
Yes, I would put it that way. Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Dr. Ramesh?
Yes, more or less, but then we do not have a 100% C-section rate for twins either. And he has a very low threshold, no doubt. We do not wait too long in any kind of complication that's likely to happen. However, we do give a short trial for vaginal. Once again, our format is slightly different. We have an OB in between, an obstetrician who decides finally as to whether the route of delivery would be natural or cesarean.
Right, Dr. Matre, you're much the same, I presume, right?
Yeah, we follow much the same.
Yeah.
We have an OB on the team who takes over the pregnancy after 12 weeks, and the surrogate follows up with her. And the decision would be basically what the OB would.
Right, and what's the cesarean rate?
The cesarean rate again would depend upon the twin pregnancy, the baby, but it would be about 60-65% of them would go in for a C-section.
I think we would probably be pretty much the same. Would that be the same in the States, Michael? Would you guess about 50-60% cesarean rate
For twins?
for surrogacy altogether?
Oh, no. No, I mean, if the woman has had vaginal deliveries, it's going to be highly likely a vaginal delivery with the surrogate baby. As was stated before, obviously if there's any concern, there might be a more sensitive touch point to get on with it. But no, the deliveries are managed by obstetrical principles that would apply to any pregnancy. Every baby is precious. Every baby deserves to be born healthy. Babies don't need to be born with lifelong problems, whether a surrogate baby or a regular baby. So they're managed by standard of care and pretty high vaginal birth rate if they've had previous vaginal deliveries. The sticky wicket, the sticky question that comes in is when they've had how many previous cesarean sections should we allow? Because the trend has moved back towards once a C-section, always a C-section in California. I was at the height of in my training in early years when we did try the vaginal birth after C-section, but it's kind of swung back to, I don't know why, if it's laziness or whatever, but it's swung back to C-sections all the time. So that's a sticky question. I actually, on the conservative side, I would lean towards limiting how many C-sections women's allowed to have. But I'm always amazed to see how there's an OB doctor willing to step up. As Karen said, we get a letter in advance. Yes, I'm happy to do C-sections women. Yes, I'm happy to follow the pregnancy and so on and so forth. So again, some of these decisions are out of my hands, but I would always vote for kind of limiting the number of C-sections a woman has.
Actually, in representing surrogates, it's swinging back to allowing them to do a VBAC to try a vaginal, as long as everything's okay and, you know, baby and surrogate are fine.
There's been a big swing back in this country to VBAC's vaginal birth.
Yeah, the surrogates are thrilled.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, like all things, it's taken to fantastic extremes by fanatics in this country, and I guess it probably is in Europe as well. Just touching on one thing which sort of explains, you're looking at my back over there, I am sorry, I do apologise. And that's because of egg donors, because you mentioned the age of your egg donors, which is about 20 to 30, which is wonderful. I guess it's pretty much the same in the States, is it, Michael? The age of egg donors, about 20 to 30?
21.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. Because in this country, we don't pay either sperm or egg donors. Therefore, we're entirely reliant on altruistic donation. And we have a great tendency only to use women who've already had children. And since women in this country are delaying childbearing, that means that the average age of our egg donor is about 36, which is a pretty dismal scenario, and there is a pretty miserable chance of pregnancy.
I did have a 44-year-old woman come to me with her 41-year-old sister as an egg donor once, so I almost fell off my chair, and sure enough, they had a baby. So I mean,
I've just got a question, and it's related to what we've all heard on the panel, but I'm just going back a few steps. What is the situation at the moment? And I'm so joyous and jubilant for the couples that are expecting several lots, also not several, 2 lots of surrogates at the same time giving birth, and good luck to them, and I hope they're getting loads of sleep now before they come. But why is that happening at the moment in India? I don't know if that's happened with CSP, but are there 2 surrogates on the go? Have the intended couple chosen 2 surrogates? I'm just interested
Well, for the same baby, for the same couple.
Yes, I'm just interested
love that one.
why I'm hearing it more and more often, and I'm just curious how that happens, that the intended parents, it can be seen as a bonus, but why are they having 2 surrogates working for them at the same time? Obviously doubling their chances of success, and in some cases I've heard they are expecting 2 lots of successful pregnancies to 2 different surrogates.
2 sets of twins.
2 sets of twins, or twins and I'm amazed at that, and they'll manage it, I'm sure, with lots of family and friends and support. But why is that happening? Is that a choice from the intended parents?
Who's going to explain that? Dr. Banerjee. Oh, sorry, Yvette, how does that happen?
No, generally, the trend in India is that normally, whether it's the Indian IPs or the IPs from abroad, we've had very few, in fact, none of the cases where heterosexual couples have wanted us to go with 2 surrogates at the same time. My second point is that earlier in the presentation today, we saw that there's a clinic which is having another surrogate as a reserve surrogate. Even that is not the trend. That might only be an exception. Two surrogates are generally required or are generally asked to us by the same-sex couples because they would want each one of their, if there's a possibility and both the surrogates get pregnant, then each one of them have their genetic babies. So that's the main reason why they would want to go for it.
So if it's a heterosexual couple, why would they be placed with two surrogates?
As I said, in heterosexual couples, the chances of couples asking for two surrogates is extremely minimal. I think it's a misconception or a misbelief that many heterosexual couples are going for two surrogates at the same time.
Sorry, can I just add to that? I am a heterosexual couple. I think we're actually, this is just my personal opinion, but I think we're actually forgetting the intentions and education of the intended parents. In that if you've had 15 to 20 years of infertility, whatever people's stories are, if you want two surrogates because you want to increase your chances and you know exactly what you're doing, and between you and your doctor, I don't think there's an issue with that. I did try with two surrogates, unfortunately, for us. I mean, we were very successful in other ways that we did it, but it didn't work. But if people want to do that, I really don't see a problem with it.
Oh, no, I don't see a problem.
There's no problem. The question was that why do we go for it and what kind of people go for it. So we are not passing a judgment whether it would be within your rights to go for it or not. We are just discussing a trend that two surrogates are generally demanded by same-sex couples, so that if it's a success, then they can have their both of them can have their genetic babies. But it's completely your own right. If you would like to spend that kind of money and logistics, you are absolutely free, and there is no law which states otherwise. You are completely free to increase your chances with two surrogates. The only thing is, as has been stated, that if both the surrogates get pregnant and if both of them have twins, or maybe in some cases we see triplets also, are you game for so many babies?
Yeah, just one comment on your remark. I completely agree. It's a choice, and the idea is to increase your chances. Yes, the complication, if you can call it a complication of getting more than what you want, is always there, and I'm sure it's always welcome. I may be wrong.
Yeah, but I think, exactly, your point is more than welcome, and I think that most people who enter into any sort of surrogacy agreement, most people are under the awareness that they could end up with 4 babies. That's what they do. And we have 5 children, and we're more than grateful for what we have, and I think it's all about personal choice.
I'd just like to add a point here. Yep. You want?
No, Dr. Martin, you go first.
We do have an ICMR guideline which governs the number of people that can undergo an embryo transfer. When I say number of people, it means intended mother and surrogate. There is a guideline which says that a surrogate and an intended mother cannot undergo embryo transfer at the same time, nor can 2 surrogates undergo embryo transfer in the same cycle. So though our entire aim is to get you pregnant and see that you have babies, we have certain guidelines that prevent us from having 2 surrogates simultaneously undergoing an embryo transfer.
Thank you. Gentlemen,
It is indeed sad that the awareness levels are so low, but surrogacy in India is legal because of ICMR and the ART bill. If today all the clinics are doing surrogacy because of the ART bill, I think it's all our responsibilities to follow it. It clearly says, Chapter 7, Clause 34, and if I'm not mistaken, Para 20. Yeah. It says no intended parents can have services of 2 surrogates simultaneously. It actually means even while you're pregnant with one surrogate, you cannot even have a second surrogate. So it goes to that level. So it is indeed a very valid point from Lisa, which, am I right? It's
Lisa, yeah. It wasn't a criticism.
I'd just like to add a point here. Very well taken, the ICMR guidelines, and most clinics in India are following the guidelines. Yet, as has been presented in the morning, it's still not a law, not to say that we are not following all the guidelines. There are issues of anonymity, there are issues of number of surrogates, which are still debatable, and we are waiting for the law to come out.
Thank you. Thank you. Jagajit, I've been saving you for this one. You run an organisation, if I understand it rightly, which allows intended parents to source donors in a variety of countries and then fly them for egg harvesting to India or the US and then fly the embryos for transfer in India. Is that right?
No, as already been discussed, already Vivek has said that there are few percentage of intended parents who wanted to do their IVF done in the place of their choice, like in some other countries. So we allow them and assist them to make that thing happen. If they want to do something of their IVF done in the US, then they can do the IVF in their part of their own interest in the IVF centers, and then we can arrange the cryo shippers to be shifted to India and get the transfers done.
And do you source egg donors from other countries?
Sources?
Do you get egg donors from other countries?
Yeah, definitely.
How does that work? How do you get them and screen them?
Yeah, what happens is we have a tie-up with the agencies in different parts of the world, like in Ukraine, in CSI countries, where if there is a demand of the Caucasian egg donors, then we can just tell them that these Caucasian donors can fly down to India. They can be stimulated in their own respective countries with the doctors, and on the day around 8th or the 10th of their stimulated cycle, they can come to India, and where the isolation can be done, and it can be followed with the IVF.
And do you think that the selection of these donors and the screening of them, do you rely on the screening in their own country, the results? Are you quite happy with that?
Yeah, definitely. We ask for the reports from the clinics regarding all the testing and the screening done before selecting the donors for that.
And do these donors wish to remain anonymous, or are some of them prepared to meet the child later on? Because in this country, egg and sperm donors have to be prepared to be identified to the child when that child reaches the age of 18. So what about these patients, your donors, your kids with Belarus?
As per the laws in India, we are not really open to give the identification of the donors. So we try to keep that thing anonymous. Whatever the intended parents are looking forward to know the donor's identity, we generally don't prefer to disclose the identity.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would just like to add that, as said by one of the doctors, that it's a guideline, not a bill, and there are various changes that are being made progressively in this bill. So it is being very actively considered that at the age of 18, the child has the right to meet the genetic parent. So even if at the time of donation, to prevent various kinds of ill decisions, we keep it anonymous, and we only share the basic characteristics like the height, color of skin, hair, eyes, and other aspects. But it is being very progressively thought that maybe once the child is an adult, he or she should have the opportunity to know who the genetic parent was.
Yeah. And meet them, or just know who they were?
Yeah, they can certainly meet them. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Once they know them, then it's completely their right whether they would like to get in touch with them through mails or what kind of communication, or whether they would like to physically meet them. But as I said, it's proposed under law, and we hope that it is brought under the bill.
Thank you. Thank you. There's one thing I just want to touch on, and then perhaps just get a few hands up around the room. Using both donor eggs and donor sperm in a surrogacy program you can't do in India because the Indian law forbids it. What about in the States, David? I mean, what's the incidence in your experience of a surrogacy couple coming along using both donor eggs and donor sperm?
Well, I have to humbly say, I always say everything I learned about surrogacy I learned from Karen. So when I approached her about this very topic, she had a freak out and was very distressed by this because of the implications that if there's no genetic tie to the surrogate, there could be a legal catastrophe like she mentioned in her talk. Since then, over the last few years, she's assured me that now with proper contracting and once they get to know the couples pretty well, they occasionally allow it. You probably do too, right?
Oh yeah, and as Karen mentioned, we have a case, the Bazanka case, and it says the intent to parent controls whether you have a genetic connection or not. So
since the California law is he or she who intended to be the parent is the parent, now the donor embryo into a surrogate is a little more palatable. Obviously, it's a pretty last-ditch, desperate step, and so the people that we've done it for have been through everything. Everything seems to fail against all logic. And so this solution becomes a way for them to at least have a baby. And so it is done occasionally with very careful screening of the intended parents, because we do want to make sure that they're going home with the baby.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's a little more common than it used to be.
Thank you. Just let's get a quick show of hands. Who in this room would be in favour of a surrogacy program in which both donor eggs and donor sperm were used? Hands up if you're in agreement. No, I'm talking about anywhere. Let's say we have a surrogacy program, a commercial surrogacy program in Australia at some time. Who would be in? Yeah, and I would think that is probably, thank you, that's probably about representative of the sort of general community opinion as well. So,
50-50.
you can't in India.
In America, unless one of the parents has a
It's genetic.
one of the
She's right.
So if you had a donor egg and sperm in America, you wouldn't be able to get, you had to get a child back to Australia.
Is that right, Stephen?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
That's not right.
Oh.
The law,
right in the US.
unfortunately, is different from the practice of the department. And the department is requiring a DNA test. The view of the full federal court is you don't need the DNA test. It's who is the parent as a matter of reality. Unfortunately, family court decisions last year have made it more complicated, but no, that's not correct as a matter of law.
So, I just came back from California and they wanted a genetic, a conditioning mother, the father had to prove he was the genetic father, otherwise he would have had big problems. So it's a bit of a grey area.
Is that right?
For the U.S., yes. If you go to India and you have a surrogacy and the intended parents don't have a genetic connection,
Well, you can't do that.
they can't
Yeah,
come
we-
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
So because in the States, is
Yeah.
that true? You have to have a genetic connection?
If your child is born outside the United States and you do not have a genetic connection,
Inside.
What about inside the States?
inside's fine.
Right, so you can use donor egg and donor
She was
sperm.
talking about taking her child back home.
Okay.
But you deliver a child in the States.
But
what was-
if you're from the United States and you don't have a genetic connection, you're fine. But let's say you go to the Ukraine, and you're a United States couple, heterosexual couple, and you go to the Ukraine and you use donor egg and donor sperm, you can't get citizenship for your child.
Got it. So the child basically has to be born in the States.
Yeah.
Got it.
But what about bringing the baby back to Australia?
The same
Just
is
to
true.
mention again, the point is the department's practice is different from the law.
Which means that the department is going to give the child citizenship?
Look, I've had clients where, say with a gay couple where the sperm was mixed, so we didn't know who the father was, and all the department required, I wasn't involved in that aspect of it, but all the department required was an order, a custody order in California.
Thank you. Can I get on to one final topic before we break, and that's the interaction with the surrogate. I mean, that might be different in the two countries. Now, Stephanie, when you're drawing up your contracts, do you talk about things like the frequency of meeting with the intended parents and the surrogates and how they're going to keep in touch and the level of contact after delivery between them and the child?
Yes, if I'm meeting with a surrogate, I always go over that. She's contractually obligated to update the intended parents. So we talk about that and how she's going to do that, especially if she's working for an international couple, because I want her to make sure. And I also want to make sure that there's been a match meeting. So I always ask the surrogate, have you met the intended parents, either by phone or in person? Or have you talked about your communication? Because you can have a disaster 6 months later when you're pregnant, because the styles of communication are different. And for the intended parents, it's the same thing. Or, are you on the same page? Because we talk about this, and there's some surrogates and intended parents that want to be very close, and they want to do everything together. And then there's some surrogates, like repeat surrogates, who are like, I have my own life, I'm going to give you a baby, and when it's born, I want to say hello, and I want to say goodbye, but I don't need a friend. So we definitely do discuss that.
Right, and this applies also to long-term interaction, does it?
Yes. Typically, though, long term, you know, you have a baby or two, and the surrogate has her own life, and so you just touch base every so often. I had my own surrogacy, so we were extremely close, of course, while she was pregnant. And then we talked later, but it's, you know, nearly 11 years down the road, and it's not like I, you know, ignore her. You know, she'll comment on my pictures on Facebook, and I'll comment on hers, but it's not the same type of relationship we had while you were pregnant. It just can't.
No, sure. Dr. Matre, what's the situation in India? Because I suspect that the relationship between the surrogate and the intending parents is probably less in India, is it? Am I right in that?
On the contrary, we have one visit which is mandatory at our clinic is before you do the embryo transfer. We have the surrogate and the intended parent meet each other and have an agreement signed in the presence of the lawyer where they're both agreeing to have each other as the intended parent and as the surrogate. Once the surrogate is pregnant, we encourage a lot of Skype calls, which would be as the patients and the surrogates wish, as often or as less as they would like to have. And post-delivery also, they have the option of keeping in touch with the surrogate and the surrogates in keeping in touch with the parents. As the years are passing by and the surrogates are becoming aware, a lot of surrogates feel left out if their parents don't want to Skype with them and don't want to meet them. So they are keen on keeping in touch with the intended parents. So it is something that our surrogates are becoming aware of and feel connected to the parents if they are kept in touch with.
And are the intending parents intending to keep in touch with the surrogate?
It's a choice that they have, and we honor their choice. If they wish to, they definitely can. And what we have seen is at least through the pregnancy in the 9 months, most of the parents want to keep in touch with the surrogate mother. After that, there are few who do and few who don't, but that's a choice that they make.
Can I just
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. On a very practical basis, the interaction between the surrogate and the intended parent will largely be governed by where the surrogate is staying. Now, this is one question on which a lot of debate can be done. It is still a rarity in India that there would be separate surrogate homes, unlike our agency, which has separate surrogate homes, where the surrogate is encouraged to stay throughout the period of pregnancy for a better monitoring and a better lifestyle. If the surrogate is staying in our own home, which you never know how far that would be, it would seem like an invasion to the privacy where there are joint families and the surrogates are staying with their mother-in-laws and their husbands and their children. So the practicality of the parents being in physically being in frequent touch with the surrogate becomes automatically less. However, we as an agency encourage the interaction between the surrogate and the intending parent. Although the surrogate is counseled that she would have to have to be in touch with the intending parent, but it is completely the right of the intending parent as to how many times they would like to meet the surrogate. But the presence of an interim surrogate home makes this procedure much more standardized and easy.
I think this is yet another topic to debate whether to keep them in their homes or surrogate homes. But as far as the question was concerned, I think, yes, there is a lot of interaction between the IPs and the surrogates. But depending on their availability and their accessibility to email, Skype, telephone, and their visits to the clinic and whether the IPs are based locally or abroad, all that, these are the confounding factors that decide what is the level of interaction. But we are very open to it and we encourage interaction. Post the process, I think the level of interaction is quite minimal. Like you had mentioned, everybody wants to, it's a lovely process, it's a good memory, but everybody gets on with their lives.
Thank you, thank you. While you've got the microphone, do you allow the intending parents into the delivery room when the baby's being delivered?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do it the same as well?
We don't. We don't.
You not?
No. We do not permit intending parents into the delivery room at the time of the delivery.
We take consent from the surrogate and we do.
Right, surrogate agrees. Dr. Matre, what about your unit?
No, we do not permit the parents to be in the delivery room. And this is, as much as we would like to, as the parents would like to, it's the hospital policy that they do not allow the intended parents to be there.
Right.
And very often, even if we do get permission on special cases, the intended father is very rarely allowed into the delivery room because the surrogate may not be comfortable with another male in the room.
Okay, before we wrap it up, are there any questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Do the surrogates in India speak English?
Not all of them. There'd be very few of them who would speak English. But when we do have Skype chats, we always have a translator present next to the surrogate who would help you with the communication over there.
Yes.
I'm interested in a discussion about embryo transfer. Obviously, there's a big difference between a 2-day embryo and a 5-day embryo. What were you actually talking about?
As a routine, we do day 2 or day 3 embryo transfer. Very rarely, we go in for a blastocyst that is a day 5 transfer.
Why is that?
Two reasons. One is when we are doing a surrogacy program and we are talking about a lower age group or egg donor program, there is a high pregnancy rate.
Yep.
So when we are transferring 2 or 3 blastocysts, we are obviously looking at a much higher pregnancy rate, and we'd have to restrict to transferring one blastocyst. And when we are looking at a higher age group of the intended mother, we find very few embryos, the quality of the embryos, and very few embryos going to a blastocyst stage. To prevent the loss of embryos in the culture going up to day 5, we would transfer at day 2 or day 3.
Right. Michael, what about your practice?
Well, the predominantly for egg donor and younger patient that we are going to day 5 for the obvious reason, and that's the best way to select a single embryo. I wanted to make it real clear to everyone, there is no pregnancy rate improvement by going to day 5. Did I say that? There's no pregnancy rate improvement going to day 5. It's an improvement of embryo selection. So if this embryo here on day 3 is here, and you waited to day 5, you didn't suddenly make it better. So I think it's very, very important to explain that very clearly, because there's some misconceptions about that. For the over 35 crowd, or for other reasons, there might be reasons we would do a day 3 transfer. It's usually when embryo selection is not the issue. So very commonly for women over 40, where we're planning to put 4 embryos in, we will then go to day 3. The only little caveat with all of this is whether you're going to India or the United States, you've come all the way from the end of the world of Australia. You kind of want to have an embryo to transfer. So everything is done on an individual basis. There's pretty likelihood that we're going to get a blastocyst from an egg donor. If there's a worry that we won't get a blastocyst on an older patient, then we discuss it case by case, and everybody has different feelings. Some people want the feeling that they really want to know what they're getting. And other people want the chance that, maybe by some miracle you put this embryo in, it's going to stick, and put it on day 3. So it's a little individualized based, as you said, on age.
Thank you very much. What time's lunch now? Now? It's cooked now? Sorry guys, have to wrap it up at that point. Please thank our panel for their